Welcome to yet another live interview with Vincent. We agreed that I won't say his last name because I just absolutely turned it to shreds when I tried to say it the first time.
You were pretty close. Everybody gets it wrong, so don't worry about it.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. So I appreciate that. I appreciate your kindness. I must say, man, most people, almost everybody always also has a problem with my name, so I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get the show right on the road, and I want to start off with immediately a question.
Yeah.
Because that's what's on my mind, man. Why is total life freedom a must?
It's a must if you want it.
Okay.
And that's what I've learned is what's beautiful in this world is it's not for everybody. For me, at a certain point, I thought, I thought that it's for everybody, but it's not. Some people want security. Some people want a job and somebody telling them what to do and structure to that. Mm-hmm. That's not me. Ever since I was a kid, I knew I wasn't able to follow directions. I knew I wasn't the person that was going to be in line in school and get good grades and just follow along. I knew that. And my teachers let me know that they knew that too. So I struggled for many years. And so a lot of issues to go with, a lot of things to figure out. But as I got older and time went on, and especially having a family, time was the most important thing, not the money. We're chasing the money so often, and money's important. I'm not going to make like it's not. But the time, especially we have three boys and we homeschool, time freedom is what led to total life freedom. And it comes together, time, finances, even location, to be able to travel, to be able to go the places that we want to go. I want to be able to have control over how our life is determined, and that's where it comes from.
I hear you. I like the way you said that. You ruined the other question that I had about.
I'm sorry.
Why not everybody, right? Why not everyone? You already explained that. No apologies necessary. That makes it a lot easier for me than the rest. Because I got tons of questions, man, and I'm really looking forward to it. But before we go on with my other questions, give me a little bit about you, your background story. You already mentioned you got three boys, but tell me a little bit also about your wife. I read somewhere 16 years of marriage already. Maybe that's even more now because maybe that was an outdated post. I'm not sure. 17.
Let me see if I get it right. It's 17 years. We met in college, which was fantastic. We were both going to school for journalism, and I went to Ohio University, and she was there, but she was away doing an internship. And when she came back, we met within the first week of her being back, and immediately we were at a party, college party, and I just noticed. It's funny because I proposed to her in the newspaper. We were both photographers at a newspaper in Indiana, and I proposed to her with an article in the newspaper about the night that we met at that party. And the funny thing about that party was afterwards she told me that when she was getting ready, she said, "I'm going to meet the guy that I'm going to marry tonight," to one of her friends. And I ended the article by saying, "I hope that's true. And will you marry me?" And that's, 100,000 people saw that article as we got engaged. So it wasn't intimate. Everybody read it. So 17 years together. We live in Pittsburgh, but we are probably moving out west to Arizona very soon, because we spent 3 months there this winter and a couple months last winter, and we loved it. And we said, that's freedom. That's where we want to be. So that's in the works right now. And we homeschool our three boys and run our businesses from here or wherever we want to go. And anything you want to know, I'm an open book.
I'm always interested because you got three boys. What are their ages, so people can have a good idea on how you coordinate all your daily stuff?
13, 11, and 7.
All right, 13, 11, and 7. All right, cool. So they're a little bit older than mine. I got two boys. One is 3, one is 5.
Okay.
So you can definitely school me on some things that I'm struggling with.
I remember it well.
Cool. Excellent, man. So I got to ask right away, because I read a little bit about you. I always try to, in the limited time that we have, make sure that I know as much about you as possible before we start. And I can only imagine with what you just mentioned before as well. You went to school, you immediately noticed that, this is not really working. I must say I completely connected with you because my mom always used to say, Klaas, if you put your head above the corn, you're going to get it chopped off. And that kept happening because I just couldn't stand the way, things were going. So I'm just wondering, man, can you share a little bit your philosophy in regards to obstacles and challenges? Because I think you must have ran into a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the way we parent too, is we are not just trying to solve every problem for them. That's not the way it is. You figure it out. It's a phrase in our house. A lot of us figure it out, because the challenges were there all the time for me. And what I learned is, even within my book, as I'm writing my book, man, all the best stories came from the challenges. They came from the problems. They came from when it seemed really bad and I need to figure something out. Because I'll tell you, there's no time that I'm more bored in my life. It was when everything seems to be figured out for that period of time. Because there's not a big challenge and I have to create it. And a lot of times I'll create it with drama, right? Even with our business, we had a 6-figure wedding photography business for a decade. And I remember just being like, I'm done. And my wife was like, what are we going to do? And I started coaching. I was like, okay, we literally killed it. And I think I like the drama. I like the stress of having to build something, having to be challenged. So even if it's not brought to me without even thinking about it, I think I bring it upon myself a lot to keep myself engaged like that. So I am all for it. In the moment you hate it, but every great story comes from a big challenge. So the older I get, the more you just kind of say, okay, what am I learning from this? What's going to be the lesson that I'm going to learn from this challenge? And it goes better and better.
Well, that's powerful. You start thinking, wow, if everybody would look at challenges the way that you just mentioned, people would grow a lot faster and enjoy themselves a lot more, right? We're so afraid that we keep just, what you call like, it's not for everybody. A lot of people like that security, like that bubble of, what we know is what we know. We don't look for those challenges, right? Even though we know that if you don't look for them, they come.
Well, they're going to come. And Andy Andrews has a great line. He goes, we are either headed for a crisis, in a crisis, or coming out of a crisis. It's one or the other. So, I mean, even like we have an issue with one of our kids right now that we're dealing with. And it's funny because about 3 months ago, I remember saying in my mastermind, saying that same line. And I said, I'm clearly headed for a crisis because I'm not in one and I'm not coming out of one. So when it came, I was so much more prepared for it. Because like, yeah, well, this is part of it. And how do we deal with it? And I can't say that I've always felt this way. And I can't say that I do it perfectly at all. But just being aware of, as much as this is awful right now and whatever we're going through, there is going to be a great story that comes out of this. And if a great story comes out of it, that's how you write books, right? That's how you're able to teach people. If everything's always easy, what are you going to teach? How do you, like, okay, sorry, I don't understand. No, it's very relatable when you understand problems that have to go through it.
Exactly. So you just mentioned something that struck me as something that not everybody does. How do you prepare for knowing, something is going to come? Because usually people just think, how do I say that? We just go through life and then all of a sudden it's just like, boof, it hits us, right?
Yeah.
So how do you prepare yourself for challenges that might come, even though you don't even know what kind of challenge it is?
It's a great question. And I had to think about this one a lot. And I think I have an answer for it, because it's not what you might believe. What it is you have to be prepared. It's almost preventative medicine. And for me, it is a lot of different ways. It is getting great sleep, because I know if I'm going too hard, right? Because everything's fine, right? So I can stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning, binging Netflix or working till 2 o'clock because, hey, there's no problems now. But when it comes and you're tired and you have not gotten sleep and then you got to deal with it, you've set yourself up for failure. Eating well, exercise, spending time with my kids, because there might come a time that work is a lot busier and I'm not so always preventative. And I am a fly by the seat of my pants type of person a lot of times, but I truly believe that if all the other things in order, money, that's the other thing. I mean, how do you know a crisis is coming? Well, if you spent all your money and you're in debt and you're overspending and then something goes wrong, it's just putting another brick on top of a pile of bricks on your back. But if you have no debt, when everything's good, you wind up building your business, paying off your debt, building an emergency fund, and then the car goes out and it's a $6,000 repair. It's as easy to be like, okay, just pay it, as opposed to how, it's just another thing on top of another thing. So you can prevent a lot of crises by, when everything is going well, getting yourself in good shape. So when it does happen, it doesn't hurt so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And in relation to that, because you just mentioned, like, you know that at a certain point you're going to get challenged with your kids, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So I've understood from somebody that I had a live interview with as well, and I think you can relate. And I hope you can shine a little bit more light on that. It is better to discuss situations with them. And like, for example, you're on a drive and you just relaxed, or you're going for a walk with one of your boys or all three of them, and teach them something then having to teach them something in the moment that, it pops off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because I never learn in crisis. Like how many times has somebody told you, oh, it happened to me, calm down. I'm not gonna calm down when you tell me. I'm already worked up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm gonna learn is when things are calm to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, if we're doing that enough, if we are too busy on our phones, if we're too busy doing so much other stuff or in activities to not teach the lessons when they need to be taught. But it's really hard to teach it once you're in the thick of things.
Mm-hmm. But that's the moment when I see every single time, and I'm guilty of that as well.
As am I.
Right? When we start teaching, what is it that we think that when a kid cries and goes all crazy, that is the moment that we should teach them something?
Well, it might have been the way we were taught. It might have been the way that when we were kids, we hold, people up on pedestals like our own parents, but a lot of times they didn't know. They're figuring out as they go too, but yet when you're 6 years old and something happens, you think that's the way it's supposed to happen. Well, maybe not. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a better way. And that's our job as parents, is to constantly be learning. Unfortunately, like as you learn more and more, you go, man, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago. Right. But the key is just to keep learning, because even when my kids are adults, we're going to keep learning.
Exactly. That's a great message for everybody. Just keep learning. I keep hearing that all the time. So I like that. Yeah.
Well, I think the greatest disconnect in terms of my life, I know so many people that we work with, is people that are growing and they're actively growing, but the people in their lives are not. Mm-hmm. That's hard, because if you are actively looking to get better and better and better, and other people in your life want to keep things exactly the way they are, you're going to completely separate over time with that. So that's just a natural occurrence of growth, unfortunately.
Exactly. So that makes me come up with another thing. What I'm a little afraid of, and I should say correctly, I used to be afraid of it, is me being on this journey of, learning and improving myself all the time. And my wife, I won't say staying behind, but not going in the same path and the same direction that I am going, and that's what you mentioned, like a disconnect. And I was scared of that. What would you say to those fathers out there that having similar feelings?
We went through the same thing. Okay. When you read in my book, like, when I pretty much got on board, like, oh, we got to get our finances together. That was the big thing for us. We were having our first kid and we weren't making very much money, and we had a bunch of debt. And, for Elizabeth at that point in her life, she didn't see anything wrong with it. And I read the Dave Ramsey book, and I was really into it. And she was kind of just really lukewarm towards it. And I kept kind of bug her, right? Come on, get on. And she wasn't, I think the more I pushed, the more she pushed away. Mm-hmm. And finally I was like, well, I'm going to keep learning this. And I'm not going to bug her, because I wouldn't want to be bugged, right? About something like, so I just kept learning, and I kept kind of doing it. And you have to do it. I think the way to change somebody's mind, if you want to change their mind, is by actually doing it yourself first. By preaching what you're talking about, by living what you're talking about. So I started, reading this stuff. I started cutting back on some stuff financially. I started paying attention and doing certain things to make her think, oh, he's serious about this, and good things are coming from this. And she slowly got on board. So I think we need to be the example, instead of trying to, get your wife to be more into personal growth. If she sees you with a better attitude, getting in better shape, being nicer to her, being a better dad, eventually she's going to be like, maybe there's something to this. Maybe he's not just trying to BS me. Maybe he's getting better. And then she very often will be like, because we have this in our masterminds all the time, where it's like they then start getting on board, wanting to learn. But I think when you bug them and push them, nobody responds well that way. That's been a hard lesson for me to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, pushing just means that you get, they keep saying like you push and then you just get the ball back, right?
Well, there's two sides of it. You can't convince somebody that doesn't want to be convinced, right? So I've pretty much given up on trying to convince people that don't want it. But what I do for a living is I challenge people to do what they are capable of doing, but they hold themselves back on. But these are people that actually want it. So there's a big difference between somebody in my mastermind that's like, I want you to challenge me on this because I know this, and a relative that never asked for it. Because now you're just annoying these people, and you're gonna hurt your relationship, whereas other people actually want that from you. So you have to know the difference. And I, day by day learn more and more the difference who actually wants it and who doesn't want it, who doesn't want any of it. Just have other types of conversations, but it's not that.
Absolutely. Now, during this interview so far, you've mentioned the word mastermind several times. Can you give us a picture of, what is a mastermind? How does that look like, etc.? So fathers that are listening to this that are thinking like mastermind.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. It's a part of our life. Now, for over 20 years, I was a photographer. That was my career. I was a professional photographer, newspapers, magazines, weddings, corporate work. And what I learned was after a while, I kind of was like, I wanted a new challenge. And I wound up coaching different photographers on business because photographers are terrible at business. Artists are terrible at business. And then I wanted to get better and better. So I joined a couple of masterminds. I joined a mastermind with Larry Hagner and with Dan Miller. And I'm in one now with John Lee Dumas, who Entrepreneur on Fire. And so as I was doing it, I loved the aspect of it because I loved what came from it. This community of people that are challenging each other to get better, that really care about each other, but aren't really holding back on, hey, what about this? Did you try this? We're all looking for that growth, as opposed to when we leave the mastermind, a lot of people are not. So I said, this is what I want to do. I want to start one. So I started my own mastermind, and then that's grown into series of masterminds, 4 different masterminds that are within a community called Total Life Freedom. And that's what I do. That's between that and I do now, keynote speaking, and I am starting a podcast in a couple months. But that's a huge part of our business, and what we do is running this Total Life Freedom community. So that's where it comes from.
That's fantastic. And man, you're doing everything. Sounds like I love that. So I appreciate you sharing that with the mastermind because it's so important that fathers out there start understanding there are groups out there that can help you. And yes, you can find it out on your own, right? However,
and that's the whole thing. That's what's beautiful about it right now is there's so many different communities that are being built, micro communities, communities just for dads, or communities for business owners, for communities, 6 figures and beyond. You can pick the one. And so I will always be in one because I always want that community and I want that challenge. And now in this, virtual world, I'm not sure how many of your listeners are entrepreneurs, but it could be very lonely. It could be a very lonely business when you are on your computer in your room and not talking to anybody. So a big part of what we brought into it was not only the online calls, but doing it in person. So I do, 6 to 10 live one-day masterminds around the country each year. So we can get together in person and eat and talk and cry and laugh and challenge each other. And then we do a couple of retreats that are multiple days so we can get together. So you want the human in-person element because there really is nothing like, there's one thing to talk like this, but if we were sitting at a coffee shop together talking, it'd be way different to be able to have lunch together and talk. So that's an aspect of this world that is kind of overlooked, and people get lonely and depressed when they're just kind of on their own. They've got nobody to bounce ideas off of. They have nobody to really push them. So I think that's where a lot of this world is going.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the world's getting smaller, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming for you as well. And you just mentioned a couple of really big names earlier, John Lee Dumas, Larry Hagner. I mean, I've noticed from these groups, they got people from all over the world listening to them, following them, asking them questions, and growing with them. So I think that's definitely a great thing. And what you mentioned also, maybe not so great thing, because it takes away that, which is also important, that human contact, right? That being
Yep.
in person and seeing each other. So,
because it's so easy to just hide behind the screen and log on, right? You know, we're in different countries and all of a sudden press one button and we're talking to each other. It's very easy to do that and forget, like, I really do want to just get out and talk to people and move and get some exercise. You know, we could just sit here all day long. So I'm very wary of that. In terms of you talk about a crisis that could come, I can see that for a lot of people, including myself. I don't pay attention to it.
Nice, man. I like that. Look, I'm looking a little bit behind you. I got to ask.
Yeah.
What's up with the wall?
That's my brain.
Okay.
It's index cards. These are my ideas. So when I do a daily podcast with my mastermind group, and when I'm writing a book, I write down on the index cards and I put them on the wall. So when I'm kind of stuck, I just spin my chair around and I go, I'm going to write about that. So I'm interchanging here and there. So it's my crazy brain up there in terms of it helps me sleep at night when all the ideas come out and they go on the wall.
And great sleep is important, as you mentioned before, to make sure that the challenges are overcome as fast and as easy as possible. Nice, man. I like that. So, man, I feel from what you're sharing, you're a really passionate person, and you're really passionate about, helping others impact their lives, right? What is passion? What does passion mean to you, and how important is it for you to continue on your road towards achieving your purpose?
I think it's important if there's a purpose to it. I really think, there are a lot of times I had a passion, but there wasn't very much of a purpose, and that was kind of just bound up energy. And, earlier in my life, in terms of my photography career, that passion was very self-involved. It was what I wanted. I wanted to photograph this. I wanted to go shoot a Super Bowl. I wanted to do this. And it was cool. And I got a lot of great feedback from it, because I was the guy, when you go to a party, like, he's the one, next to Tom Brady and all this type of stuff. But after a while, that got kind of old, because it was really just stories about me. And it was very, it's cool. It's fun. I mean, the pictures are, it's fun. But what happened, passion for me, I think, as I got older, was I want to help other people learn what I've learned. And it wasn't like that in my 20s and 30s. It wasn't like that at all. It was very dog eat dog. I come from New York, where, New York photojournalists, like, you got to get your shot. I wasn't concerned what anybody else was doing except myself. And that was the progression for me. So the passion, what I've learned in time is, it's great to have passion, but when you can take that with an actual purpose of something that you want to accomplish with it, that's when it really gets amplified. Because for me, passion that's self-involved right now is, a wife, 3 kids, and a group of people that are a part of it. Like, it's not about me. It's not, but for a really long time, it was all about me. It all started with our first dog. We had a dog, we get married, all of a sudden, like, little by little, the self-involvement goes away, because we need to start taking care of other people. And now it's a full transition of, like, it's so little about what I need anymore, as opposed to what I want to use my passion to help other people. But I couldn't have said that 10 years ago.
True. Yeah, I keep hearing that our kids teach us more than we teach them about ourselves, right?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, the time freedom for us came from them, because before, and even the money, in terms of the idea, before I would waste money, and I would spend time watching movies or sports. I was so into sports. And when Andrew was born, and then Nolan, and then Dylan, it's like, I'm not spending that time on that stuff. So even with our work, we became better at work and business, because as opposed to just, I'll go do that just because I like doing it. It was like, no, well, you're asking me to leave my family. So you're going to pay for that. That's valuable. And that was the first time that we actually started valuing our work in terms of price and stuff like that. Cause like, no, I'm not going to go shoot that assignment for all those hours away from my kids for this amount of money. Whereas in the past I would have. So our kids, for us, I mean, the success of our business is very much due to them, and just my need to protect my time with them. So they teach us in very many ways.
Nice. I hope they don't understand that yet before they start asking for commissions.
Now, our kids, it's it's the type of thing where we don't give them any money. We don't, they have to earn it. Like we were in Arizona and they started a little weed pulling business. And they made $160 in one afternoon pulling weeds in different yards. And it's like, so now they buy their own stuff. But then now we'll take them out to dinner here and there, right? But we pay for the water and the clothes, but they are saving their money because I don't want to raise entitled kids. I don't want to raise kids that are just like, oh, mom and dad have the money and we just ask for it. Like, how are you going to earn this? How are you going to? That's part of homeschooling for us, is life schooling, like getting them prepared to be on their own, to be self-sufficient, and to be thriving on their own.
Well, it's great that you start with that, because that's another topic that I want to talk to you about, homeschooling, right? It's something that's really known and normal here in Europe, not so much. So please enlighten me a little bit, like, how did it start? Why did you make the decision to homeschool?
Yeah.
And how, let's start with that. Sorry.
Yeah, it was something that we'd never considered before.
Okay.
So this was not like a life path, like, oh, we knew. No, when I think of homeschooling, to all the homeschooling families out there, I hope this isn't insulting, but I was thinking of, people that make their own clothes and they wear, tinfoil hats and kind of just crazy people on their own. So like, that's not us. But a friend of ours, Ken Carfagno, a great friend of mine, one of my best friends, they homeschool. They have 5 kids now. They had 4 at the time. And he was telling me about it. And I'm like, nah. And he was kind of just explaining what it was like. And then one day he kind of said, his son Kenny wakes up and has his books next to him and gets up, does his work, and work is done about 12. And then they go for a walk and they do some stuff. And I was like, well, that was what life was like when the kids were little. And now Andrew was in 3rd grade, Nolan was in 1st grade. And now they were getting on the bus at 7:30. They were getting off at 4. There was homework. And like, we weren't seeing our kids anymore. We weren't teaching them anymore. So I started thinking about what Ken said, and I started doing my research. And I read Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto, which completely blew my mind in terms of the schooling system. And if you don't want your kids, if you want to keep your kids in public school, don't read that book, because it will change your mind. And then I realized that as I learned that literally 2 hours of work gets done a day in school, between recess and interruptions and in between classes and reviews. Generally 2 hours of new work gets done each day at school. I'm like, crap, we could do that by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, we're not. So we started studying it, and we started realizing if we want to travel as a family, if we want to teach these different things that we're talking about, we're not going to be able to do that with them in school. And, there's a lot of indoctrination in school. There's a lot of, we all know it, we've heard it, that, schools were built to create employees, not to create entrepreneurs. They're built to force you to follow, to train you to follow. And we don't want to raise followers. So that's a bunch of it. We can go on for 2 hours about it, but that's kind of the overview of how it started.
Nice. I like that. So that's it. You mentioned something very important, at least for me, right? And what I'm trying to share with, at least that's my journey, and I'm sharing that as long as I go. For me, a fearless father is a dadpreneur, right? Somebody that's at home taking care of the kids, but also teaches them to be an entrepreneur, right? And I'm just wondering, what is your strategy towards teaching them to become entrepreneurs? Or, well, let me say it like this, to have the possibility to become entrepreneurs, because in the end, of course, they make their own decisions, right?
Their decision, yes. There's a little bit of brainwashing, a little bit in terms of like, we talked about the reality of like, you can start your own business. And if you do this, so much of business is referral, word of mouth. The number one thing I would tell anybody is treat your customers really well and over deliver, because your work is going to come from them. 80% of jobs come from referrals, and people don't pay enough attention to their own customers. So if you go and you start a weeding business, right? A lawn mowing business at 14 years old, and you do a really good job and you deliver them a handwritten note when you're done, and you check up, and they're going to hire you again, most likely. And then they're going to tell somebody about you. And before you know it, you're going to be making, they start seeing the numbers. I'm like, well, or you can go to Arby's when you're 16 and put the uniform on and make $8 an hour. It's your choice. So there's a little bit of brainwash, like, well, obviously I want to probably do this thing. So, but it's up to them. They might, our oldest is really into bugs. You know, entomologist, that's a profession. I'm not sure that's an entrepreneurial thing for him to do. But we talk about ideas and we talk about how to figure these things out. And that's a big part of what we can do here that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But it's not, like you said, it's up to them to decide what they're going to do. And we look at it like we're guides, at least I do, you know, as well as like we let them go to what they love studying. My youngest loves taking apart circuit boards and figuring out how that works. I don't know anything about that. I learned from him, but that's because it's his interest. If when I was a kid, I was given, like I became a sports photographer when I was 25, right? If I was told that could be possible when I was 14, that's all I would have studied. And I would have been so much more successful, so much quicker, instead of studying a whole bunch of crap that I had no interest in. So we want them to love learning. And by studying the things that you want to study, you love to learn. Because how many people leave high school, they never read again because they had to read, but it was never what they wanted to read. Right?
Right here.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I totally agree. So I'm wondering in that case, like what you just mentioned, my son is interested in taking these things apart, and I have no idea about that. So how do you go about then teaching him or making sure that he learns what he needs to know? What's the process there?
We don't give our kids enough credit, I think.
Okay.
Kids are really curious. When you give them, like, they study it. Like, we'll go to YouTube and we'll watch videos, or we'll get books, or you just learn by doing. How do you learn how to ride a bike? By doing. How do you learn how to climb up this thing? By doing. I think we're so busy as parents trying to tell them what to do that we don't give the space for them to actually learn on their own. And the thing, when they learn on their own, that builds confidence. And when you figure that out, you go, oh, I could do the next thing. And then I could do the next thing. And I think we kill so much confidence with school because we feel like we have to be teaching our kids everything. And as I look back on school, my teachers didn't know what they were doing. I hate to say it, but they were, you know, they took a job and they weren't passionate about it. A lot of them, not all of them, but so it was a job. They weren't like the greatest English teacher in the world. It's not what they studied. They were doing these different classes. They were talking to the teachers about the next job. I heard it. But my kids, nobody's going to care more than they do about what they're interested in. So when they study bugs for 4 hours, they're going to learn. Like our oldest, when we go hiking in Arizona, he had a scorpion with him. And he's 13, and then somebody stops him. Like, oh, what is that? Then they're freaked out by a scorpion. Within 5 minutes, he's teaching a 45-year-old about scorpions, about how they're not dangerous, how this and that, you could hold them. And I'm taking pictures because he's teaching the 45-year-old. And I think a lot of times that we forget that can happen. And we don't always have to be teaching them. I think we need, at least from us, we need to be guiding them towards what they love, because that's what's going to eventually lead to the growth and the learning.
Exactly. So you mentioned something very important, right? Kids are curious. We used to be curious and then we lose that. I just finished a book called Curious because I noticed that I'm no longer curious, and I was wanting to use it in different areas of my life, right? One, right here, talking to you, I must be curious. I must hear things and try to pull out a little bit more, right? So that you, as an interviewee, can then deliver more value, but also with my wife and with my kids, you know, because you showing curiosity builds an even stronger relationship. At least that's what I think.
You're right.
How do you go about making sure that your kids stay curious and what you mentioned before, that's so important, that they learn to love learning?
Well, I think by what we just talked about before, which is giving them that freedom to kind of go to what they love. Now, it doesn't mean sitting on the Xbox for 12 hours playing a mindless game. That's not what we're talking about. We're very regular about that. They get a little bit of time, but we're going to be, it's not telling you what you got to do, but you got to find something to figure out. And I think boredom is a good thing. And I don't think kids are bored enough, because when you go from getting up, getting on the school bus, being told what to do till 3 o'clock, getting off the school bus, doing homework, then going to soccer practice, then coming home at 6 o'clock, then doing homework, you never have time to be bored. You never have time to be curious. And I hated that. I never enjoyed that. I need some time to be just kind of on my own. But to them to be curious, you know, there's a line that we use a lot here, and I heard it from Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a fantastic book. And he said, statements close minds and questions open minds. And that's what we talk a lot. Are we talking in statements or are we talking in questions?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have questions, you're curious. And when you have statements, you're not learning. You know, this person is the president, whatever you talk about, politics. When you make it a statement, you are not looking to learn. You are looking to get your point across. It's hard to have a conversation with somebody and grow with somebody that gives statements.
Mm-hmm.
When you have questions, so even within my own coaching, it's so much based around questions and curiosity. It's not like, oh, you should do this. That's why people are like, well, why do I need total life freedom? You don't. I don't know if you do. Do you want it? Are you interested in that? Are you interested in homeschooling? No. Well, there's no point in me trying to convince somebody that's not interested in it why they should. That's not my job. My job is to be curious about the people, what they want, and what really holds people back mostly is fear and limiting beliefs. That's what holds people back from raising their prices, from doing the work that they want. It's generally fear. And they're not curious enough. They're not asking enough questions. I think that's the problem for a lot of people is they don't ask enough questions.
And would you make a distinction in between asking questions? Because there are people that are asking questions. However, it is always generating the same answers, right? What I mean is this, and this was during another live interview, and I really enjoyed that. It's like when your wife comes home or when you come home, you ask like, how was your day?
Yeah.
Right? What's the first response? Yeah, it was okay.
It was okay.
It's fine.
Fine.
Instead of asking, and this is what I loved when he said that, is like, what was like the one greatest thing that you've done today, which makes people really think, right? So is that something that you've innately got as a coach, or was that something that you had to develop? And if so, how did you do that?
Well, I've fortunately or unfortunately always been very curious, and to the annoyance of other people. I remember my brother one time, they were going to get my brother and my friend Ben, they went to go get their license. I think they were something real estate license. And there was one girl in the class, they were telling me the story that was like, well, why? She's asking why. And she was annoying them so much because like, that's just like Vin. Like this was way back. Like they were making fun of me saying that I would always ask why. Always curious why. And it drives people crazy who want the answer to be the same. Well, don't question it. So I always question. I question school. I question why I need to be in this class. Question why I need to, I was annoying, I'm sure, with this, and still can be because I'm very curious. And people that don't want to go down there will drive away from that a lot. But I think always wanting to learn and wanting to grow is a key aspect to it. So I love that what you brought up about asking different questions. Well, I think it was Pat Flynn that taught this. And it was something to the effect of like, we'll ask our kids now, what did you learn today that you could teach me? And I still remember the first time I asked that, Nolan's head just kind of went back and he was like, I've never thought about that before because we've never thought that our kids can teach us, right? We're always teaching them. And then they came up with every day. So we don't, I think about it now, we haven't asked that in a couple of weeks. I need to ask that more because it really brought some great responses that normally would not have happened.
It's funny that you say that, man. I got it right here on my whiteboard. What can you teach me today?
Yeah, right there.
It's a great question. Now, here's where I'm struggling. But I told you, like, my kids are a little younger, and I know for a fact I'm struggling with a couple of things that you've gone through and that you can help me with. This is one of the things. Everything you mentioned sounds really great. And what comes in my head is like, my kids are still too young. I need to wait. For the 5-year-old to at least like 6, and for the 3-year-old, same thing, to at least like 6. Am I having a limited belief that I'm putting on myself and my kids, or am I right in this case?
I think it's age appropriate, right? It's, you forget. Like I forget what it was like with a 5. It depends on the kid too. I think we forget also like my 13-year-old is so different from my 11-year-old, which is so different from my 7-year-old. So it's the more you know them, the more you understand. Like, so I don't think you're putting too much pressure on yourself, but I think it's your job to learn. It's your job to be curious about them. Because your 5-year-old is different than your 3-year-old. So they're going to handle things differently. But I think as long as you are interested in what they're doing, you are there for them and you are curious in terms of allowing them to study what they want to study. Because you want, like we said earlier, you want them to love learning. You don't want them to be 20 years old not wanting to read another book. I want my kids, like, what are you interested in? Because then you take that interest in how can you help others. Like with Andrew, our oldest, it's like he's very into the bugs. I'm like, then he'll find people that will want to step on a spider. And then he'll want to teach them, no, these spiders are not dangerous. We've been trained. So I was telling him we were in Arizona, like, this could be something for you to then get out to more people. And then what happens if you convince more people that they're not as dangerous? And he started explaining, well, if there were more spiders, they kill the insects. They kill the bugs. Like they do a lot of good for households, right? Well, if you let them know you need less of this because of this, and he started thinking in his head, like, oh, this isn't just about me. So I think it's just age appropriate in terms of how you, but at 5 and 3, the fact that you're even asking this question is wonderful, because most people don't even ask it at that point. They basically just follow. So don't beat yourself up about it. I think you are on the right path with that.
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and you mentioned something important. Actually, you and everybody else that I interviewed is all about taking action and keep trying things, showing curiosity within yourself and within your kids, right? So I really like that. Can we expect a podcast of your son as well? Andrew is his name, right?
Andrew. I don't know.
Sorry, I got excited. I'm like, maybe he's going to do a Buck podcast.
He's done videos. He's done YouTube videos explaining them, and our middle one has done YouTube videos doing like Lego stop motion, which is cool. And actually Dylan, the little guy, is doing videos about just explaining electronics. I don't know where they get it from. I was never into bugs. I was never into electronics. I was never into ants and Legos the way they are. And that's the point. Like, I was into sports when I was a kid, and my kids could care less about sports. Now, literally, I was a sports photographer for all these years. I'd be photographing the biggest names, and they'd turn on the TV. They'd see me on the sideline, and then be like, okay, there's Dad. I'm going outside. They don't watch the games. But if you think about it, if I hadn't learned this, I would have been frustrated. I was like, why aren't you into what I'm into? Why can't we do this together? They don't care. I'm thrilled. It's actually freed up a lot of my time because I don't care anymore about sports because they don't. But I lost track of what we were talking about there for a minute, the reason why you asked me. But in terms of the podcast, yeah, they do their own little videos in their own way. They see me. I do a daily podcast for my mastermind, so they hear me on it. And I just think in due time, I want them to do it the way that they want to do it, and I'm here to guide them. And it's not like, oh, Andrew, let's do a podcast by now, because when it's his idea, he'll do it. When it's my idea, he might push back.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. Make sure you share later the links, because I really want to follow them, which is good for them, but also good
I will tell them that's going to be a good little push for them. Like, get this moving.
Yeah, man. I love watching the YouTube. I'm big on YouTube. I go live every single morning, and I like the platform. And I'm already thinking like, okay, how can I, introduce this to my kids as well? But there is also a trap, like what you said before. It's like they have to find out things for themselves without us guiding them, and not, which I see a lot of parents do, is push their kids on doing things. Right? It happened. Well, now that you talk about this, it happened Sunday when we went to water at the amusement park. And there was a Batman show. The show was over, and Batman and Robin were each along the line and giving high fives. And there were parents just pushing their kids forward, like, go run, go touch it. And I'm like, wow, shouldn't your kid himself develop a certain, desire, and then, I was going to say balls, but maybe that sounds a little rough. I don't know. It's bad.
I think it's all done, and we've done it, right? It's all done out of love. You want them to have that experience, and a lot of times kids are shy, and they do need a little bit of a nudge, right? They wanted to do it, but, that's in the moment. I see it a lot in sports, and that's why I kind of get more and more down on it, where it's kids in Little League year after year and year because their dad wanted them to be in it. The kid doesn't really care, and they're in this uniform. It's kind of like a job, right? You're in the same uniform as everybody else. You're kind of just half-hearting it. You're not really, you don't have a passion for it. And that's where the story with Andrew was really interesting for us, because a couple of years ago, Nolan was playing baseball. Andrew decided not to. I think he was 11 at the time. And instead, so he came to the game, and Nolan's playing, and he's out in the field with the uniform looking like everybody else. And Andrew's on the side, and he finds a snake on the side of the field. And all of a sudden, I look and I see everybody playing baseball and everybody looking exactly alike and nobody really standing out. And then I look and I see him, and this is not to toot his horn, because he, a lot of people are like, well, why aren't you playing baseball? So they were kind of not sure about it. I see him with a snake and about 15 kids all around him and adults all surrounding him, asking him questions. He's leading. And I'm like, that's it right there. Because if he was out on the field, he wouldn't be leading. He would have just been another face in the crowd, not doing anything special. And he decided, no, I'm going to do what I love to do. And I thought it was a real great microcosm on life, because it was like he stood out from the pack. He decided not to do it. He stood up for himself, said, no, I don't want to do this. And he wound up having followers because he did what he actually loved doing. Mm-hmm. So I think, in terms of stuff like that, I see a lot of people pushing their kids into sports that they don't want to do just because the parents want it, or just because everybody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. Of course you play Little League. That's what people do. I hate that mindset. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same here. Like, of course, my son is playing soccer because, everybody else does. The whole of Europe plays soccer.
And if you don't play, people are like, well, why aren't you playing? Like when Andrew, the first year, he did, why aren't you playing baseball? And I remember thinking, why is it that everybody plays baseball? And I played baseball. I love baseball. But why does every kid have to play baseball? Why couldn't they be doing something else that they like doing? It's because we train them to follow.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that's a very important message for fathers out there to start realizing, what kind of child am I creating, or what kind of young adult am I going to be creating by pushing them towards doing something that they want, that I don't or will not like in the future, right?
Yes, I don't think people think about it enough. From the time you're 6 years old to the time you're 22, if you go to college, you're being told what to do for 16 years. Mm-hmm. And then we are the same people that will be like, these kids can't make decisions anymore. They don't know how to make why do you think they can't make decisions? For 16 years, they've been told, don't make decisions. Mm-hmm. Don't do your own thing. Don't, if you challenge things in school, you get in trouble, right? If you go out of line, you get in trouble. If you don't get the grades, you get in trouble. So we've taught them to fear taking the lead. Now, mm-hmm. Why do we wonder that 23, 24, 25-year-olds can't take the lead? Because we've trained them to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that message. It's very powerful, and it must be done. It just made me realize also, one, of course, you had that really proud dad moment, right? With your son standing there. And I think that's what fathers are looking for, but trying to push it that way. You want your son, at least I know I have that feeling sometimes, like I want they're both in karate lessons. Mm-hmm. So I want my son to know how to really punch and kick and be really like winning gold medals and stuff like that, because you want that dad, that proud dad moment so mm-hmm. much, right? So I understand where a father's coming from when they push their kids a little bit, just what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm not in a thing where I'm like, oh, I have it all figured out. We very well could be screwing this up. We don't know as parents. But I just know instinct wise that they respond really well to doing their own thing and learning. And this doesn't mean just go out and eat candy and watch television all day. That's not what we're talking about. Like, what is it that you want to study? Mm-hmm. What is it that you're interested in? Because like I said multiple times, I want them to love learning. I want them to be lifelong learners. Mm-hmm. And by me making them do a certain sport that I'm interested in doing, or my, boss's kids do it, and I want to keep up with them, that's not teaching them a love of learning. That's teaching them, I don't know what it's teaching them, but conformity is what it's teaching them, like to follow along just because. Why do I have to get on the school bus at 7:30? Because. Mm-hmm. Explain why? No, we can't explain why. This is just what we do. Why? Yeah. Did you like it? No, but I still have to do it. It's like, that's the way we parent. And it's, I know I'm not changing the world with this, but I know we can start with ourselves and hopefully influence some other people just to think differently and to challenge themselves on it.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I'm having a hard time there with other parents, right? Because I'm trying to teach my kids certain things and do certain things. We spend a lot of time in the playground where parents bring just chips and candy every single day mm-hmm. and offering it to my kids. And sometimes, at a certain point, it's like, I got to say no again, or I got to say yes again, or, but I've taught my kids to come to me first and ask me at least, right? Yep. And I taught them to always say thank you. And then the parents are like, no, you don't have, why would you say thank you? You don't have to. I'm like, what? Yeah. You must. And
it gets harder as it gets older because the influences get bigger. Mm-hmm. And I think if you do the right work at home, then and they're going to make their own mistakes too. That's the other thing. It's not going to be perfect. Like sometimes they're not going to say thank you, right? Sometimes they're going to do things and they have to learn from that. That's been the hardest part, is to be able to step back and let them learn. Let them, the times that I learned not to talk back to people was when I got punched in the nose, right? It didn't happen from somebody stepping in and being like, you shouldn't have said that, right? I said the wrong thing. There was consequences from what I said. Hopefully I learned from those consequences and I learned and got better from it. And I think, we put our kids in these bubbles sometimes that we have to make sure everything's right for them, or be a guide, but let them figure some stuff out, because that's how they get stronger, by figuring out themselves. And that's where the confidence comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what you mentioned, like in the beginning, let them find their own challenges. No, sorry. Let them run into their own challenges and then work on finding their own solutions, which makes them then, create those beautiful stories that you mentioned earlier. And
it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite and tell you that it's easy for me to do. It's not. It's a constant challenge. But I can see the more controlling type of parents be like, but what about this? What about SAT scores? What about college? What stuff like that? And we don't worry about that type of stuff. Not that we don't worry about college, but I'm not high on it. I'm not high for, on 5 years of, 4 to 6 years or whatever it's going to be, where you're just more the same. It's high school. Like we're talking to our kids, like if you start a business now and you start saving money and you take classes that you want to take, not just what the curriculum is, and don't go 150 grand in debt to drink and go to parties and then come out with a degree that you're not even going to use, right? And then then you got to pay off debt. So I got to go get a job I don't even like to pay for my college debt. And then that's what my book is about. Then all of a sudden they're 35 years old and they wake up, they got a wife and 2 kids and they hate their job. And they're like, what happened to my life? Because that's what we've done. So it's like, guys, you could literally be where you have this amount of money, you have a car, you control your time, you do the work that you like to do. If you are in that situation, like we talked about earlier, and you don't like what you're doing, you financially set yourself up to try something different. That's what we do. So the sooner they can figure that out, to me, the better. So that's what we're trying to guide them towards.
Awesome, man. I love that. So talking about book, and specifically your book, right? How did that grow? How did you come about saying, I'm going to write a book? And let me say it like this. I'm about to start writing my book, my second book.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Together with 2 other amazing fathers, dadpreneurs, I should say. And what would be your advice for people, guys, fathers out there that are thinking about, man, I would love to write a book?
Okay. First thing that I would say that I learned is don't worry about trying to sell the book. And I think so many people go into it trying to sell their book, and they make it more about making book sales than it is about making an impact. And, if the book is good, Seth Godin taught me this. He goes, get it into 10,000 people's hands. I don't care how you do it, get it there, because if the book is good, it's going to spread. If it's not good, it's not going to spread. I don't care how many people buy it. It's not going to spread. It's not going to spread and what people do is they want to bug in all their friends. Buy my book, leave the review, whatever. I gave my book away. I gave my e-copy of the book to at least 500 people. Those were the reviews that started where people and they started talking about it. They started, hey, let me have you on my podcast, this one. That's what grew it. This business completely grew from this book, which I never cared about selling the book. Now, my publisher doesn't like hearing that, but I really didn't care. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about because honestly, you go through a traditional publisher and it's $15 for the book and blah, blah, blah. You get $2 from it, right? It's not a money-making deal. It's not something, but if somebody reads the book and they love it, all the other stuff that you're working on, they'll be interested in. The money on the business side of it comes from the inside of the book, not from the outside of the book, the content in there. So, but back to the original question is, you got to do what is at your heart in terms of what you want to write about. I didn't hold back on it. Like my book is real stories. It wasn't trying to be somebody that I'm not. It wasn't trying to be a guru. There's a lot of embarrassing stories in there. It's very honest, it's very real, because that's what I want to be. So my advice would be write who you really are and what you want to do, and don't make it something to try to make a bestseller, because all that's a bunch of crap anyway. I'm an Amazon bestseller. It means you sold 24 copies at 2:00 in the morning in Germany for whatever. It really makes you could become an Amazon bestseller for anything if you just finagle it right. I joke around that I'm a non-best-selling author because I'm like the only non-best-selling author, right? Because everybody's a best-selling author. So don't worry about all that crap. Write something that is to your heart that really touches the people that it's for, and just give it away and spread that word. And that's the way I would go about it. That's my advice.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I'm sure that because I'm going to share this part with both Kenyon and Brandon, who I'm writing this with, we got the title down already, from first class father to world class father. So
I like it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that too. It was Brandon that came up with that, but we're a strong team, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So I really appreciate you sharing this. It's going to help us out a lot. Man, I'm thinking, do I have time for one last question? I want to ask my last question if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned like we do the whole homeschooling thing, just so we control our time as a family, and we love traveling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've studied in the U.S. At Western Carolina University in a small town called Cullowhee in North Carolina, and I've noticed there are people that don't even leave that small little village, right? Why is it so important? Or no, why should somebody travel?
Depends on your love for it or your want for it. There's some people that live in one town their whole life. They're happy with it. Mm-hmm. And that's great. And I'm not here to convince that person. What I'm here, if anybody that's interested, is what we've learned is, with the homeschooling thing, the question we get a lot of times is, well, what about socialization? And that question drives me crazy, because our kids are more social than you could ever imagine, because every day there's different people that they're playing with. They're talking to 7-year-olds. They're talking to 40-year-olds. It's all over the map. So our kids learn what life is about. Like, think about the way we do it in school, which is, well, if you're 14 years old and you're in, say, 10th grade, right? And everybody in 10th grade is in your class. And if you're a year older than me, you're an idol. And if you're a year younger than me, you're an idiot. Mm-hmm. That's the way school works. Well, I don't know how old you are. It doesn't matter to me. And it's the same thing with my kids. They can talk to 17-year-olds, they can talk to 40-year-olds, or they can help 4-year-olds. And that's what homeschooling is to us, and that's what the travel is to us, is that they're not fearful of leaving their little town because everybody else is weird. And we are, these, like, we're in Bethel Park, like, we're Bethel Park people. Like, what does that mean? Like, our kids went to Arizona for 3 months, and they made friends with everybody in the block. And when we left, we had a group picture together. They were bringing, gifts over as goodbye. It was really sweet for 3 months. And it really made me think, this is teaching them that they could make friends anywhere. Mm-hmm. And they can meet people anywhere. And they're not trapped into, like, well, I'm from Ohio, so you have to come here, or we live here. I want them to know and have the confidence that wherever you go, you can meet people. Mm-hmm. And to not be shy about it. So I think the homeschooling part for us really opens up the world. We call it, everybody's like, well, where do you go to school? We're like, everywhere. People are reading about gold mining, gold panning in their books. We were in Arizona. We were doing it with the Gold Diggers Club. Our kid was digging up, finding gold in the desert. Like, we're doing the stuff that they want to learn doing, what they want to learn about. So to me, the whole thing is just opening up so they can meet new people and be challenged, and just have the confidence that they can meet people and make friends anywhere. That's the key to us.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. So last, Vincent, how can fathers that are listening to this ask you questions that pop in their head, stay in contact with you, follow you, watch your journey, etc.? Buy your book.
There's the book. There are a couple things. I don't really have a social media presence. I don't spend time with that. I have my group that I'm a part of, and that's really about it. You can email me. I respond to everybody's email. The other thing, if you want, I am literally doing the audiobook for right now. I'm doing it on my own. And if anybody wanted a copy of it for free, I'd be happy if they emailed me to send it to them, of the book. Nice. So if anybody wants to email me, Vincent@freelancetofreedombook.com. It'll be done in a couple of weeks. I'd be happy to send that out to them. Contact me there. We'll be doing the podcast. That'll probably be the best way. And that won't be till July, but it'll be the Total Life Freedom Podcast. And so look for there. If you want to email me, I can keep you updated about that. But that's probably the best way. The website's totallifefreedom.com.
Awesome. All right. I'll make sure that if you're listening to this as a recording, you will find both links in the comment section, in the section here included, so you can click on that and get in contact with Vincent. So we've come to our end. It went incredibly fast. I just keep surprised how fast these hours go, man. It's insane. So Vincent, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for opening up and sharing all your experiences with us. I really enjoyed it. And for everybody that's been watching, spending an hour with us, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I hope this has been valuable. It for sure has been for me. I've learned a lot, and I keep saying to people, make sure that not just listen to this, but really take action on the things that draw the most attention for you. So that said, I hope to hear you guys very soon. Take care.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out, you got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.